Welcome to DS University. Thank you for choosing the Etatron eMP metering pump to be the solution for your water treatment needs. Today, we are troubleshooting the eMP metering pump. The key areas in troubleshooting are 1. All the eMP LEDs are off and the pump is not stroking. 2. The eMP has LEDs lit, but there is no function from the controls. 3. The eMP is stroking, but not drawing chemistry. 4. The eMP draws chemistry, but does not inject. 5. Alarm LED on the eMP is green. 6. Alarm LED on the eMP is red. And 7. The eMP does not run in either program. 1 pulse per 1 gallon or 1 pulse per 10 gallons. In this video, we cover Section C of the troubleshooting documents. This includes key areas 5, 6, and 7. If these areas do not apply to your troubleshooting problem, please watch Section B of this troubleshooting series for key area 4 and Section A for key areas 1, 2, and 3. You can find the videos on our website or at the link in the description below. It's best to troubleshoot in a clean area, but if your Etatron is installed, cover your chemical bucket or stock tank so you don't lose any parts. For this video, you will need a 3mm Allen wrench, diagonal pliers or cutters, small towel, flat blade screwdriver, and a syringe. If you do not have a syringe, you can purchase the syringe kit through Dilution Solutions at 1-800-451-6628 or search syringe kit at dilutionsolutions.com. Part 5. If the alarm LED on the EMP is green, you need to 5A. Replace or refill your chemical bucket or stock tank. 5B. Inspect your suction tubing, tubing connections, and foot filter. 5C. Tighten the pump head. Please be aware, if any of the following sections from Part 5 allow for the green LED alarm on the EMP to turn off, you no longer need to keep watching Part 5 of this video. Part 5A. If the alarm LED on the EMP is green and the chemical bucket or stock tank is empty, replace or refill your chemical bucket or stock tank now. Once the chemical bucket or stock tank is replaced or refilled, go through the priming process for the initial installation. Part 5B. If the alarm LED on the EMP is green, inspect your suction tubing, tubing connections, and foot filter. Lift the PVC suction tubing, along with the foot filter, out of the chemical bucket or stock tank. Disconnect the suction tubing connections from the foot filter by unscrewing the foot filter tube nut. Set the foot filter aside in a safe place. Remove the nozzle, collar, and tube nut from the PVC suction tubing and set aside. Do not lose them. Make sure any leftover chemical in the tubing or foot filter pours out into the chemical bucket or stock tank. Locate the suction valve at the bottom of the pump head. Disconnect the suction valve tubing connections from the pump head by unscrewing the suction valve tube nut. Remove the nozzle, collar, and tube nut from the PVC suction tube and set aside. Do not lose them. Visually inspect the condition of the PVC suction tubing. If the tubing is cracked, old, or broken, then you need to replace it now. Discard the damaged tubing. Use leftover tubing from your EMP installation to replace the damaged tubing, or call Dilution Solutions for assistance on the correct replacement tubing. Estimate the length of tubing you will need by measuring from the suction valve to the chemical bucket. Using the diagonal pliers, cut the PVC suction tubing so that the foot filter will comfortably sit around 2 inches from the bottom of the chemical bucket. Set the remaining PVC tubing aside. If you just replaced your tubing, skip ahead in the video to prep your tubing connections. If your tubing was not damaged, look at both ends of the tube. If either end is flared, use the diagonal pliers to cut the flared portion off. Grab the suction valve tube nut and slide one end of the flexible PVC suction tubing through the outside opening of the tube nut. Slide the collar back onto the tube, making sure the collar's crown is pointed away from the tube nut. Slide the nozzle back onto the end of the tube's opening. Push the collar and nozzle together as close as possible. Pull the tube nut toward the nozzle to compress the collar and nozzle tight together, forming a ferrule connection. Reattach the tube and tubing connections onto the suction valve of the pump head by hand tightening the tube nut. Do not cross-thread nor over-tighten. If the tube nut is not securing, recheck the ferrule connection. Pull the tube nut toward the nozzle once more to compress the collar and nozzle together. Retighten the tube nut until secure. Reattach the foot filter tubing connections onto the loose end of the tube. Be mindful of their orientation. Push the collar and nozzle together as close as possible. Pull the tube nut toward the nozzle to compress the collar and nozzle tight together, forming a ferrule connection. Let the PVC suction tubing hang from the pump head as you inspect the foot filter. Do not place it back into the chemical bucket or stock tank yet. Grab the foot filter and shake it back and forth. You should hear a ceramic ball moving freely inside. If not, separate the foot filter into 3 pieces by popping the filter basket from the filter body. The filter seat may stick to the filter body. Make sure the filter seat rests in the filter basket instead to avoid losing the ceramic ball. Set the filter body aside and locate the ceramic ball in the filter seat. If there is no ceramic ball, switch out the current foot filter with a new one or call Dilution Solutions for assistance. Set the filter basket aside. Pour the ceramic ball out of the filter seat and into your hand. Set the filter seat down and use a small towel to wipe the ceramic ball clean. Do not misplace it. While holding on to the ceramic ball, inspect the 2 blue O-rings in the grooves of the filter seat and make sure they are not damaged. Put the ceramic ball back into the filter seat and set the filter seat aside. Grab the filter body and inspect to make sure the small blue O-ring on top of the filter body is not damaged. If any of the O-rings are damaged, switch out the current foot filter with a new one or call Dilution Solutions at 1-800-451-6628 for assistance. Set the filter body down. Grab the filter basket and put the filter seat back into the filter basket. Insert the filter basket into the filter body and forcefully pop them together. This may take a couple of tries. Please be sure not to misplace the ceramic ball. Pull on the 2 sections to make sure they are connected securely and shake the foot filter back and forth once more, verifying the ceramic ball is moving freely. Grab the PVC suction tubing and connections hanging from the suction valve of the pump. Reattach the tubing connections to the foot filter by hand tightening the tube nut. Do not cross-thread nor over-tighten. If the tube nut is not securing, recheck the ferrule connection. Pull the tube nut toward the nozzle to compress the collar and nozzle together. Retighten the tube nut onto the foot filter. Lastly, place the foot filter back into the chemical bucket or stock tank, making sure it is sitting vertically. Part 5C. If the alarm LED on the eMP is green, tighten the pump head. Over time, the pump head may work itself loose from the pump. To check this, remove the 4 white screw caps on the pump head. This can be done with your finger or a flat blade screwdriver. Set the white screw caps aside and do not lose them. Underneath the caps are 4 pump head screws. Using a 3mm Allen wrench, tighten the 4 pump head screws about 1/8 turn each. It's best to tighten in a crisscross pattern. Finally, reinsert the 4 white screw caps back over the pump head screws. Part 6. If the alarm LED on the eMP is red, you need to 6A. Assess the pressure of the installation. 6B. Inspect the discharge tubing, tubing connections, and injection valve. If any of the following sections from Part 6 allow for the red LED alarm on the eMP to turn off, you no longer need to keep watching Part 6 of this video. Part 6A. If the alarm LED on the eMP is red, assess the pressure of the installation. Check to see if the pressure of the installation is too high by using a pressure gauge. Part 6B. If the alarm LED on the eMP is red, inspect the discharge tubing, tubing connections, and injection valve. Locate the injection valve installed in the supply line. Unscrew the tube nut from the injection valve. Remove the nozzle, collar, and tube nut from the end of the tube and set them aside. Do not lose them. Now locate the discharge valve tube nut. Unscrew the tube nut and disconnect the tubing from the discharge valve. Remove the connections and set them aside with the others. Visually inspect the condition of the rigid polyethylene discharge tubing. If the tubing is cracked, old, or broken, then you need to replace it now. You can replace the tubing with the same type left over from the install or rebuild of the unit. Call Dilution Solutions for assistance on the correct replacement tubing. Cut the rigid polyethylene discharge tubing so that it runs comfortably from the discharge valve to the injection valve. Set the remaining tubing aside. If you just replaced your tubing, skip ahead in the video to prep your tubing connections. Look at each end of the tube. If either end is flared, use the diagonal pliers to cut the flared portion off. Set your tubing aside with the connections. Locate and remove the injection valve from the installation saddle or tee. Visually inspect the injection valve for debris. Try to clear the debris with either running water or using a seal pick. If this does not work, call Dilution Solutions to order a new injection valve. Reinstall the injection valve into the installation saddle hand tight. Grab the polyethylene discharge tubing and the injection valve connections you set aside earlier. Slide the tube nut and then the collar back onto the tube, making sure the collar's crown is pointing away from the tube nut. Slide the nozzle back onto the end of the tube's opening. Push the collar and nozzle together as close as possible. Pull the tube nut toward the nozzle to compress the collar and nozzle tight together, forming a ferrule connection. Reattach the tube to the injection valve by hand tightening the tube nut. Do not cross-thread nor over-tighten. If the tube nut is not securing, recheck the ferrule connection. Retighten the tube nut onto the injection valve. Grab the discharge valve connections you set aside earlier. Reattach the tubing connections back onto the loose end of the tube. Be mindful of their orientation. Push the collar and nozzle together as close as possible. Pull the tube nut toward the nozzle to compress the collar and nozzle tight together, forming a ferrule connection. Reattach the tube onto the discharge valve by hand tightening the tube nut. Do not cross-thread nor over-tighten. If the tube nut is not securing, recheck the ferrule connection. Pull the tube nut toward the nozzle once more to compress the collar and nozzle together. Retighten the tube nut onto the discharge valve. Be mindful, because without proper orientation, air can enter into the system, causing the eMP to not operate correctly. Please note, if the overload alarm LED is still red, it may be disabled. To check this, try to run the eMP in standby mode. If it does run, the alarm has been disabled. The red eMP overload alarm LED should now turn off. Part 7. If the eMP does not run in either program, 1 pulse per 1 gallon or 1 pulse per 10 gallons, check the water meter interface and inspect its connection to the eMP. Not all water meters are created equal. Sometimes they send too many signals or send signals too rapidly. In both cases, the eMP strokes too many times and moves at a rapid pace. First, check the water meter interface to see if the dial matches your desired program. Confirm the same program is set on the eMP. If not, change the eMP program or replace the water meter so that the two match. If the issue persists, inspect the connection of the water meter to the eMP to see if it is loose or has been disconnected. The water meter makes the pump run, and if the connection is loose or disconnected by mistake, the eMP will not operate. If the connection is fine, disconnect the water meter and the eMP lead wires from each other. Now, test the eMP individually. To do this, touch the lead wires together. This simulates a signal from the water meter, closes the contact, and tells the pump to stroke. Do this in both programs 1 pulse per 1 gallon and 1 pulse per 10 gallons. Switch programs by putting the pump in standby mode and press the F or function button. If the eMP works by itself, it is time to test the water meter. Do this by running fresh water through the supply line and watching the dial for movement. If the dial moves, reconnect the eMP lead wires back to the water meter lead wires. Polarity typically does not matter, but if it does, the white wire of the eMP is positive. To finish up, run the eMP metering pump through both programs, or at least through your desired setting to make sure it is working correctly. The eMP metering pump should now run correctly through the programs, 1 pulse per 1 gallon or 1 pulse per 10 gallons. We hope this video has been helpful with troubleshooting the last 3 key areas of your eMP metering pump. For more information, please call us at 1-800-451-6628 or chat with us online at dilutionsolutions.com. This has been DS University. Thanks for watching.